So, welcome again, everyone. And if you're new, welcome. So, we will be continuing with our Compose Camp. And in today's session, we'll be looking forward to Android Studio and we'll be creating some basic user interfaces using Jetpack Compose. And this will be our motto for today's session. So, let's get started. So, to create this screen might not be the same as yours. It is because I have some projects already here. So you will get a screen which will give you option to create either new project or open an existing one. So you have to create new project. And after that, you can choose for empty compose activity. Then next. So here you will give the name of your application. So let me give. Okay. So this package name will be the name of your file in which your code will be there. It is in this way to make your file unique, and this will be your saving location. And the language would be Kotlin, of course, because Jetpack Compose is used with Kotlin only. And minimum SDK, it is uh, for telling the system that what is the minimum kit Android software that you are targeting. In my case, it is Android 8 Oreo. So after you have set up the initial setup, you can just finish. So there will be some initial setup that in Android Studio will take care of. Okay. Okay, so this dialog is nothing, but just you have to click on do not show and yes.
Anurag, is there any issue going on?
No, no, it is normal.
Is it taking installation time?
It is not installation, but it is initial setup.
Okay, initialization time. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Also, there is some kind of loud background noise from your side.
Is it too loud?
For some instances, it is loud.
Okay, so mm,
Sorry, guys. Please bear in with it.
yeah, new rods have come in yesterday, and work is going on with that rods only.
Some construction work going on, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool. Blue.
So guys, as I talked about the RAM earlier, this is why the I said the minimum 8 GB RAM is required because Android Studio comes with various features, and to use those features, you require extra RAM. And as you can see, even though my RAM is 12 GB, it is taking a bit of time to make the initial file setup. So first of all, we'll be checking the project structure, like how where our coding files would be and where do we have to write the initial code. Okay, I think everything is done. So your main project file is the app file. This Gradle scripts is nothing but it is required to build your APK files or your app bundle. And this is something, this folder takes care of that. So our main information about the app will reside in this app folder only. Inside of Java, there you would find three folders. This folder will contain the actual code of our application. And these two would be for testing purposes. It will contain some test code which you will need for testing your user interface and your app logic. So this is not our concern for now. So we'll go here. In here you will find these two, one folder and one file. This main activity.kt is our main file, and in here we will create our user interface, and we'll be seeing its effect in the real time only. UI theme is nothing but some, like, what font your text would be, the color of your uh, the color scheme that your app would follow, the default shapes, default theme. It is just that. So it is also not our concern for now. So in here we have the main activity with some initial code. So if you do not understand everything, don't worry. We do not have to understand everything to get started. So we can delete this code and this code. Okay. So our first, as in our previous session, we wrote hello world program in Kotlin to the screen. So in this also we'll be writing hello world first, and in this case we will not be outputting the hello world to the console, but we will be outputting the text to the screen. So in to create the UI we make use of composables. So this is something that comes under Jetpack Compose. Composable are nothing but simple functions with the ability to uh, draw UI on the screen. Now, how do we create composable function? We first write at the rate, then composable, and then we write the function name, and the function name could be home home screen. Then so this is the normal function, and to make this function composable, we annotate it with this annotation. To write a text on the screen, it is very simple in Jetpack Compose. You just have to write text, and this is a composable function in itself. So you have to write text, and then you have to just enter the text that you want to write to the screens. So for our purpose, hello world. Now, how do we see this in real time? So for that, we have something called preview, in which we can preview our composables before deploying it to the mobile um, before deploying it to the mobile. So we create preview. Before creating the preview, we have to make a composable. So let's name this home screen preview, and we will be calling home screen inside of it, because we want to see what this UI looks like. And to make this preview, we will be writing here at the rate preview. So this way we will be having a preview that will allow us to see what our composable looks like. by just calling the composable function inside of this preview composable. So we will see the what this UI looks like by going to split and refresh. It is building. So as you can see, we have created the preview of our composable, and our composable looks something like this. So this is what this composable function will actually print to the screen. And this is the preview of what we are going to see in the mobile. For now, it is transparent, the preview. So to make it more opaque, we can go in the preview annotation and write inside of brackets show background, and we can put it to true. And by doing that, the it will show us the background. In that way, we can see how the uh, our UI will look like on the mobile screen. Okay, so in the text, if we want to, we can do many things with our text. This is okay. So inside of text, we have various parameters, and as we talked about functions in the previous session, text contains various parameters which have certain default values, except for the text argument which we have passed. So the name parameter for the text is text. Now to define different properties for our text, we can pass in different parameters like font size, and font size determines the size of our text. And so in user interfaces, the size of the components is different from natural numbers. Okay, by natural numbers I mean all the real numbers. So it consists of a unit called dp and sp. So in terms of when we are determining the size of the text, so we write in terms of sp unit, and the way we do it by writing a magnitude and then writing a period and then writing sp. If this happens, just right click on the error and then import. So it will import this unit, and now we have assigned the size to the text. And also we can change the color of our text. I believe it is color, and we can put it to let's say red. So we can also change the color of our text by just putting color against the color argument parameter name, right? And there are different values we can put in to manipulate the text we are seeing. We can also change the for the weight of the text. We can also change the font style, we can change the font family, and anything that comes under the text user interface. So next thing is that uh, for now, let's have a simple text here. Let's have two text.
Hey Anurag, sorry to interrupt. There is a question lining up. Do answer that as well. Like, does preview only show the UI component or does it also implement the functions?
Mm, it will not function. It will just show you how the static UI will look like. The preview will show you the, for example, like when you click up a picture from your camera, it you show you see the preview of the picture, right? It is not physically present on your palm, right? Then you see if the picture is perfect, then you make a copy, a physical copy of it, and then you have it in the physical form. So it is something like that. The physical form, in this analogy, physical form would be the mobile. In the mobile, the UI will be shown, and the in the digital form, it would be the picture you will be seeing in the preview mode. Okay, okay. So we were talking about text. So let's move on to the next. Let's create another text. Let's say uh, Jai Hind. Okay. Now, if we see, if we render this composable function now, then you will see something like this. Now, why is this happening? So what composable does is that by default, it puts user interfaces one above the another. Okay. So you haven't described how you want these text to be aligned. So, for example, when we write something, we write in a column. First, we write one line, then we write second line, and then we write third line. In the first, it is the row actually. It is first row, second row, third row. And when we talk about words, we put it in columns. So first word in first column, second word in second column, third word in third column, and that way we are able to write a beautiful poetry, paragraph, anything. So in here what we have done is just we have put one text and then we have put another. So composable, what it does is that it puts one above the other. So in order to align it, you have to keep them aligned, and the way you do it is by calling another function which is called column. And inside these braces you will put the user interfaces that you want to align column wise, like this. What column does is that it first text would be printed and then second text would be printed next in the next line. So this way we align our user interface components one after the another. Okay. And there is another function that is called column, that is called row. And what row does is that it aligns the components one after the another. So if there is hello world text, then the jhind would be after hello world. So let's see this in effect, just like this. Okay. Now let's talk about how can we change some properties of our text. we have seen that there is no space between Hello World and Jai Hind, and that is making it a bit weird and also very ugly. So we need space between them. And there are other properties that also we want to touch, but they may not be available through parameters like uh, it could be padding, it could be anything like this. So we have a special parameter called modifier, which takes a modifier object. So a modifier is nothing but a object that modifies the way your component looks on the screen. Okay, and for our case, we want to have some space between. We want to apply some space before hello world and after hello world, so that there is a gap between here and here. So the way we do it is by using padding, and we can assign any value. As I said, the user components here have measurements in terms of dp and sp, so these units must be given um, to make the ui work. So after that, you can see we have applied space here and here, here and here, and you can apply space just before and after the hello world by passing in where you want to apply this space. So in here, this area is called the start, this area is called the end, this area is called the top, and this area is called the bottom. So you can pass in the named parameter for that part only to apply this space to that particular part only. So we want space just for this part, that is the start, and this part, that is the end. So we will pass a 10 dp as a value for start parameter and end parameter. So what will it do? It will only apply the changes to these values, that is the start and the end, and it will leave all the other things behind to their default value, which is 0. Now that we talked about row and column, we will be talking about boxes. Now, what is a box? Box is something that we saw previously, that is stacking one component above another. So it does the same thing that we saw earlier. Without box, composable defines the default variable defined define the default way of showing UI in the box format only. But if you want this behavior inside of another composable, for example, inside of column, you want some UI to be stacked upon one another, then you can use box also. Okay, so we have known the basic elements of use interfaces. So we'll be displaying now this on screen. Let's have something on the screen. Okay, so now we want to use this composable to show this user interface on the mobile screen. So the way we can do it is, so we want to show this on the mobile screen. So for that you need an emulator. So what is an emulator? Emulator is nothing but a software form of a physical device, physical mobile device, in which you can test your app in a safe environment. So you do not have to install the apps on your physical mobile, which can, if your code is not safe, then it will be very dangerous. It can be very dangerous. So the way you do it is by going, so for in my case, there are devices already enabled. In your case, it won't be there. So you go to device manager, then you go to create device, and then you choose any device that you want. You can have a large device, long device, uh, ba based upon your choice. You can choose any of the device, and then you click next. Then you choose the operating system, that is the Android version you want to install in your emulator. Then after choosing, for example, I choose Android Q. So you choose next, then finish. Then you get a device like this is the device that we have created. So this device is created. Now you can choose this device from this drop down menu, and then you can uh, click on the run app button. So for now the app will not display anything because we haven't put this where it should be. We have just created the UI. Okay, so we have to call this function inside of this set content. Set content, what it does is that it actually puts the user interface on your mobile screen. For now we don't have to care about what component activity is on create. We don't have to mess with this. We can just we also don't need this. So we can just call our function, that is home screen, inside of set content, and it will just call this function and draw this user interface preview of which is this on the mobile screen. So let's just run the emulator. So this will take time because it is initially booting the device, so it is setting some things up in the emulator itself. So we have to wait a bit.
Till then, if you have any question, you can post that.
So here we can see that it has printed out our text here, the same as that we previewed. So we can change the font size again to make it look bigger, as it is like very insignificant. Then press run again. Like this. So we have talked about the texts. So now we can move on to loading images in the uh, on the app. So for that we need to understand where the how to actually import images in our file system, and we also need to know where they will be in the file system, and uh, from and how we can access those images. So images will reside in this folder that is abbreviated as res. It is for resources. We have, and inside of drawables we will be having our images that will be importing. And to import images you have to go to resource manager, and I think I have some images. Import drawables. Then yes, we have some images. Mm, we can use this. So we are going to import this by clicking on next. Import. It will be imported inside of our drawable like this. So we want to use it in our app, and the way we can do it is by using another function that is called image, and we use painter. We were going to find painter resource, then we are going to pass id. Now what have I done here is that just like text composable function, we have to pass some argument. We have to pass some values to the arguments, and we can customize it with other arguments. In here we want to import an image, and to draw an image we need a painter who can paint the image on the screen. So we will be passing the painter a value that is called painter resource. So everything that has a suffix resource is used to access the resources that are present inside of this resource file. And in our case, it was this image. So to make this resource painter resource understand that what resource we want to import in our screen, so we pass in an id. And id is something that uniquely represents a resource in the resources folder. So R stands for this resource, the drawable stands for this drawable folder, and and this is finally the name of our file that is present here, Kotlin mascot. And here after that we also want a content description. We can pass it null. So null is nothing but if we do not want any value, so we can pass null to that value. For our case, if you want to provide some description to the content about like what the image is all about, and this stuff like that. You can pass in that description. For example, uh, this this uh, is a Kotlin mascot, like this. So as we see here, we have inserted image after a text composable in a column. So our text will be created first on the screen, and due to column, the image that will be drawn will be after the text composable in the next line. So let's see what its effect is in the preview, and then we'll run it on our emulator. So we get something like this. I think it is visible. So now let's put it in the emulator. And if you want to see only the design without the queue, you can also click on the design tab. Currently, I have not initialized it. So this is the way that our uh, compose composable will be shown on the screen. Now this is well and good, but we want to tinker it with it more. Like we want to stretch this to the whole screen. And the way we can do this is by passing a modifier to the column, because it is kind of a parent to the composables that are inside of it, that are the text and the image, and we'll pass it a modifier, and we pass it, we call the function from the modifier. If any of you do not know about classes and objects, so it can be said that this is a kind of a so this is an object that has certain methods inside of it, and we can use that method to get something out of the object. So in this case, fill max size, what it will do is it will create an object and will return that object, and will put it equal to modifier, and that object will be responsible for inflating this column to the size of the entire screen. Okay, and to see its effect, we can also put another method inside. We can also call another method in the modifier, which is called background. In background, we can pass in the color that we want our background to be of. Let's say dot red. Okay, so first let's call it without fill max size, and see what's the result of it. So actually the column is expanded to the size of this to the end of this image, but since this image has some background color, so it is sitting above the column. So that's why the color of this background seems to be different. so no worries. So we can call fill max size to fill the maximum size of the screen, and let's see what happens then. So you see, the column was previously only this big, but calling this method, it has increased the size of the column to the whole screen. And now what we want is that we want to place these two we can say components at the center horizontally. We want to center it horizontally, right? So the way we can do it by passing another parameter function that is called horizontal alignment. Now we pass it an object of alignment, and we pass in center horizontally. And what it will do is that it will place these two components in the center of the horizontal line. Okay, like this. And you can also place it in the center by centering by putting these two components center vertically. So the way we do it is by calling vertical arrangement, and we pass an object of arrangement and center. I think it is not center. Yes. So what it will do is just put this on the center, and because it was horizontally aligned, it will remain on the center horizontally, and this will put this in the center of the screen. Now the thing to remember here is that if you do not inflate maximum size, you may need its effect on the center. So I have removed fill max size. So what it will do is it will shrink it to again as it was initially, and it will put it center according to that size. So it is centered, but the size is too small that we cannot see that it is centered. And so you have to use fill max size to cover the whole screen and to see the whole effect. Okay. And another method that there exists is the fill max width. What it does is that instead of inflating the screen, it will only inflate horizontally. Okay, so it will inflate like this, not like this. Okay, so if we do this, then this column, that is the red background, will only be limited to that area only, but it will inflate to the this. Okay, so this was about column. And similarly, these arguments are same in the row also, but in row we do not have horizontal alignment and vertical arrangement. Instead we have horizontal arrangement. In previous case it was alignment, and we pass these values. So there are different methods. You can put it space between. So what it will do, if there are two components, so it will spread them apart and put them on the ends of the screen horizontally. Space evenly, It will distribute the space between them evenly, and space around is again, I think, yeah, it will put maximum space between them and some space at the end and the start of the element. So let's start with the space around like this. It will leave some space here, and space between. It will just push them totally apart, and they will be sticking to the start and the end of the screen like this. And here you can also pass padding also. What padding will do in this case is that you might be seeing this that this red color is totally attached to the start of the screen. So if we pass padding of let's say 10 dp, then there you will see some gap between the start of the mobile screen and the start of the column, just like this. Okay. Now the thing to remember here is that padding was called after the background uh, method. So what it does is that first it will inflate the column to the entire screen horizontally, and then it it will then put color in the background of the screen. Then it will apply some padding we saw here like this, and then it will arrange the items uh, by adding space between them. So first it will arrange this and it will arrange this. Okay. So this was for the normal. We have seen loading images. We have learned about boxes. We have learned about preview. We have learned about composables. So these are the basic components that you will require to build apps. And other than that, you can have some interactive components also, like buttons. Let's create some button. And to create button, you just have to write button. And so a button, if you see, consists of two components. First, there is this outline. There is the background color, like you see in the background there is some color, and then there is the text describing briefly that what the button does. So, or with an icon on the button. So if you see on your WhatsApp, there would be a send button which have some symbol, that some icon that represents sending the message, and and behind that icon there is a circular shape plate, you can say. So inside of button, we can here display the text, and as we saw earlier, how do we display text on screen is by using text composable. And here we can pass text a value, and it could be res me. Okay. Now what does this uh, on click do? We are going to talk about it a little bit later, but let's first run the app. Okay, so it will create the button with the text inside of it, and you can click on it also. Now, before moving on to this, what does this on click does, we have to talk about another tool of Android Studio, that is the logger. Now, when you execute your code, multi lines of code, then there can be an error. Okay, so how do we detect error? One of the ways you can do it by printing out statements after each line, indicating that that previous line has been executed successfully, and when the next line gets some kind of error, then you can get answer to your question that where the error is actually happening. So the way we print messages here is logger by using logs, and the way we do it is by writing log. And if we want to write debugging messages, so we write D, and then we provide it some tag. It could be any kind of name, let's say hello, and then we provide some descriptive text determining that uh, something has happened. So in our case, the home screen function ends here, so we can call home screen function ended. And what it will do is that it will print out the statement home screen function ended when this line of code will be executed and when the compiler reaches this line. And we see this messages in the logcat section in here. If you see logcat, here we see the messages, and we provided a tag, so it is used to find these messages, because when you execute the code there are multiple outputs that are generated here like this. So you need to have some tag that uniquely describes that what kind of message you are looking for. So you can write here the tag that you want to see, and it will show you message regarding that. Since now we haven't executed our code yet, so there are no messages relating to that. So we will be executing the code by rerunning the app on the emulator. Okay, we say here, so when this function executed, that is when this thing was drawn on the screen, this statement was executed using the logs, and you found this log by the tag you gave it at the starting. So let's get back to what does this on click does. Now whenever you click on the button, then it needs to do something, and the way it do something is by calling a function. Now we talked in our previous session about lambda functions. These are nameless functions which you just provide by putting the two curly braces, and you provide arguments if there are some arguments that are being passed to the place where it is being called. Then you can do this by writing like argument1, argument names here, and then using this. But since on click, where this on click function is executed, like there there would be a place in the button function itself that where this on click will be called like this. And here it does not pass any argument, so we do not have any argument names, so we can cancel that. So when this on click button on click function will be executed, it will be when we click this button. So we can execute something when this button is clicked, and we will use the log to print out some statement like I was clicked. Okay. So what it will do is that you can clear the logcat by uh, right clicking and then clicking on the clear logcat. So as you can see, there is nothing printed here because we haven't clicked on the on click button. But when we click on it, you will see that the code between these two braces was executed. And the more you click, the more but the more time it will be executed like this. So now it is called a callback. If that doesn't mean something to you, then just leave it. So we talked about buttons also. Now let's talk about states. Now, whenever you see on an Amazon or Flipkart app, whenever you write on the search button something, uh, like for example, you start writing SOC, then it starts automatically suggesting you some list of products with the same letters in it, right? And the way it does is by continuously sending that data to the server and then retrieving the result. So, and also there is another thing that there are two components when you are building something dynamic. Whenever you have a text, whenever you are whenever you give some kind of interface to the user to have some input, there are two things that happen when the user presses the keyboard buttons and then the text is displayed, and these two are separate things. Okay, so you when the user clicks on a button, you get the information and then you can decide whether you want to show it or not. Okay, so the way we give the user an interface to write something on the screen, it is by calling another function that is called text field. Now text field consists of these two values are necessary. Uh, we need to provide text field some initial value. Now what is initial value? So initial value would be with which your so value would be what you are going to show your user, and on value change what you will what is there is that the user input that the user is pressing through keywords, keyboard buttons, and the way you store these and the way you maintain this structure is by having a variable. So we create a variable with the name, let's say text, and then you assign it a value. So let's keep it. Now what have I done here is that uh, you, whenever in compose, whenever something changes data, whenever a data changes, the screen is recreated again. Now when for example, when I press this button and I programmed it to show another text, what it will do is that it will completely delete the previous button and the text with it, and it will create new button with the new text on it. Okay, so whenever you are writing something on the screen, so what can happen is that whenever you are using normal value variables, like let's say normal, and you use this variable to keep track of something, what will happen is that whenever the state of the user interface changes, then this entire composable function will be called, and then it will be reinitialized again. Like this code will be executed, then this code will be executed, and the value that you gave it previously would be lost because you have given it a new value because this function was called again. Now the way to handle this situation is by using these two you can say functions, remember and mutable state of. Now what remember does is that every component in the composable is identified by pre by its unique position. For example, it is here text function at the starting of the home screen and before text field. So it is its unique position. There couldn't be another variable at the same position. So what remember does is that it tells the compiler that, hey, there was this variable that you need to remember, so that when this composable function is called again, then after this equality operator, it doesn't get reinitialized again. Okay. And the other thing is that whenever you click on it, you need to tell the compiler that something has changed. And the way you do it is by changing the value inside of mutable state of. What mutable state of does is that it contains a value that is we have given it an empty string. So it contains this value, and whenever this value changes, it tells the compiler, okay, now there is a change in the state. Now what you have to do is to recompose, and you have to call the function again in a manner that uh, this change of value is reflected on the user interface. Okay, so let's first use it, then describe it as we go. So okay. Hmm. So now, since this is a state object, it contains a attribute called value, and this value contains this value. Okay, so we want to access this value, and we want to show it to the user by passing it to the value parameter. And on value change is a lambda function that is executed whenever the user inputs something, and whenever the user inputs something, the overall text is what is passed as an argument here. So it happens like in previous case we talked about on click being called without any arguments. So in this case, inside of text field, whenever the user enters something, so that text will be passed to the on value change whenever the text changes, and this value is this value that we are seeing here. So we can name it something like user input and provide an arrow, and we can put the text value to this user input. So what it does is something like this. Okay, so when I click on it, it should display something. So when I click on it, this function is called, and the value of text, that is this, is changed to the new user input. That is what I'm going to write. And when this changes, it tells the compiler, okay, recompose, that is to call this function again. call this function again, and when this function is called again, the text, the value inside the value will get a new value that the text value contains, that is this user input. So like this. Okay, if I wouldn't have used text and have used a simple string here, then what would have been done is that let's okay, so now we are using normal text. So what it is doing is that it is putting value equal to the text value, that is this, and we are changing the text to user input. Now why this will not work is because whenever the on value change will be called and the text will be text value will be changed to this, the compiler wouldn't know that some value has been changed. The way we tell compiler is by using mutable state of, and we put its value equal to something, and then the compiler knows that okay, the value that there is some change. But since we are not using mutable state of, we are not telling the compiler that something has changed, and even though if we input something, it will not be reflected on the screen. So if we run the app again on the compiler, so if we try to input something, right, I am writing something, this this value change is continuously being called, but it doesn't, but when we are changing it to the new user input, the compiler is unaware that there is some change, so it will not call this function to show those changes. Now when we use mutable state of, okay, so this is something that you don't need to take care of. So whenever we use mutable state of, we want to call value to refer to this value. Okay, okay, so let's try to write something. Okay, so it is also not writing now, it is not writing now also. Now why is that? Even though we have used mutable state, we have now told the compiler that okay, now whenever the new user input is coming, we are telling the compiler that hey, there is a change. So now what the compiler does is that it re-executes its code, or is it executes this block of code again. Now what happens when this code is executed again is that this line will be executed, and what this does is that it initializes this text to a mutable state that has this value, and this value will be read by this value parameter through this, and since this value is empty, we will get an empty string, which is nothing here. So even if we try to put something, what is actually happening is that this field is executed again and again. Now let's see it through the log. Now we can clearly see how many times this function block is being called, and that will give us a better understanding about what is happening. Let's remove this. Okay, now when we write something, see, when we input something, then this whole block of code is changing, and the compiler is doing so to reflect the changes that is reported by this mutable state to show the user the new state, but the new state isn't saved anywhere, and because of that this line is reinitialized again, and whenever we input something, then this line of code is executed again, and the value is initialized to empty string, and it is just that. So the way we prevent this and we remember this value is by calling a function called remember. So what remember does is that it tells the compiler, okay, there is a variable with the name text at this position, whatever the way to find this position, uniquely identify this position, whatever the method, but it tells the compiler, okay, that there is this text variable at this position that has this value. Okay, so it doesn't needs to be recomposed again. Now, now what will happen is that when this code will be executed, and when the compiler will try to execute this code, so it will see that it has already been remembered, that its value is already stored in the compiler cache, and it will not reinitialize this again. So this will be executed. Now the previous value that we have entered would be present here, and this value would be read by the value, and the on value change, this value will be changing. So if we execute this again, okay. So if we try to type something, then we will be able to see the result. Even though the home string function is being executed again and again, since this statement is remembered by the system, it will skip this statement and move on to the next statement, in which uh, the new value would be read and will be executed. So we can write anything, and the function would be called uh, many times to reflect those changes. So now we have talked about buttons, remember, and mutable state of. So with this, the session for today is over, and this was the last thing that we needed for our next session. And yeah, so that's it for today. And if you have any questions, then you can uh, ask. Okay, guys, if you have any problem regarding any of the topic that was covered today, so you can ask the question in the chat only, and I would be happy to answer. I hope there was no problem in installing the Android Studio. If you have installed, please do let me know. If you haven't, then also do let me know.